There's an interesting Gemara, it's on Sanhedrin Kuf Bet Amud Bet, of a story of Rav Ashi and the king Menashe coming to him when Rav Ashi made a comment. But before we begin this, I want to show you the Mishnah on Sanhedrin, which is found on Sadi Amud Aleph, and we'll see it inside and then we'll understand the basis of what Rav Ashi was talking about. It says in the Mishnah, Kol Yisrael Hashem Hedek Olam Haba, all of Israel has a peace in the world to come. And it brings the pasuk for it. These are those that don't have a portion in the world to come. The one who says, he says that the resurrection of the dead is not from the Torah. The Torah is not from heaven. Those three don't have a chelek al-maba. Rabbi Akiva adds, he says if you read Sefarim books from the outside, if he whispers on a wound that he has and he says all of the sicknesses that I put in Mitzrayim in the name of God, I won't put on you because I'm your healer. So Rabbi Akiva adds those two include individuals that don't have a chelek al-maba. Abba Shaul adds, Af hahoget Hashem be'otiyatav, someone who says one of the names of God in their letters. Shlosha melachim va'arba'at hidyotot en lam chelek al-maba. So the Mishnah tells us that there are 3 kings and 4 hidyotot that don't have a portion to the world to come. Shlosha melachim, who are the 3 kings? Yerovam, Achav, Menashe. Those are the 3. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Menashe yesh lo chelek al-maba. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, no, Menashe does have a chelek al-maba. Shneimar, vayitpalel elav vayishma techinato, vayishevu Yerushalayim lemalchuto. The pasuk says that God heard his prayer and returned him to his kingdom. Amru lo, they answered him. Who's him? That's Rabbi Yehuda. Lemalchuto hashivu. They returned his kingdom, velo lechayel maba, but not to the world to come. Hashivu. Arba'at hidyotot, Bil'am v'doeg v'achitofel v'gehazi. Those are the 4 hidyotot. Bil'am, doeg, achitofel, and gehazi. What are the 3 kings again? It's Menashe, Achav, and Yerovam. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Rav Ashi was teaching the Mishnah, and let's go to Sanhedrin Kuf Bet, to the story. Rav Ashi, Oki Ashlosha Melachim. He was talking about the 3 kings that we just mentioned. Amar lemachar niftach behavrin. Says tomorrow we're gonna open with our friends. It's interesting that he said in the plural, not in the singular. Our friends. He was talking about the 3 kings, that they're all his buddies in a sense. Atam Menashe ithazel behalmeh. That night came Menashe to a dream to Rav Ashi. He comes to him in a dream. Amar havrach v'haverai da'abuch kiryat lan. Said, I'm your friend, or the friend of your father. Who are you talking to? Who are you talking about when you mentioned friend to me? Mehecha ba'it lemishnah Hamotzi. You trying to put me down? Where do you cut the bread on Hamotzi? He was asking Rav Ashi, when you want to put me on your level, do you even know where to cut the bread from before we settle who's on whose level? Let's see what knowledge you have. Amar le lo yadana. Rav Ashi tells him, I don't know. Amar le mehecha deba'it lemishnah Hamotzi la gamit bechavrech karyat lan. He says, you didn't learn where to cut the bread from, but you have audacity to call me your friend, your haver. Amar le agmire li v'lemachar darishna le mishmach bepirka. He says, teach it to me, and tomorrow I'll be doresh this in your name. Amar le, he tells them, mehecha dekadim bishula. He tells them from the place where it started to bake. Amar le me'achar dechakimtu kulehai. After you had all this knowledge, even as so far to know where to cut bread from before the bracha, ma'itama ka palchitu la'avodah zarah. So why did you fall into this avodah zarah problem? Amar le, Menashe answers him, Ihavat hatam, if you were there, havat nakitna b'shipuli glima berhatat abatra'eh. He said you would pick up the ends of your glima, of your cloak, or your jalabiye. He goes, in order to run to those avodah zaras if you were around in my time. And the next day he went to all the rabbis. Niftach berabuta. Let's start and talk about our rabbis. This is a very interesting Gemara. There's a whole discussion whether you learn halachot from dreams. And there was this Rabbi Yaakov Marvish, who wrote a book called Shut Min HaShamayim. Rabbi Mansour taught it during Corona. He taught a couple of things from the book. It's kind of interesting, where the rabbi would ask questions. He was a rabbi from Provence, or from France. He would ask questions before he went to sleep at night. And in the dreams, they would give him answers. But like almost all the answers are not halakha l'maaseh. We don't accept almost anything that's said in that book. It's just interesting that there was a concept that way. But lo b'shamayim, we already know that Torah is on the shamayim. It's just interesting how that process and how that book, was authored and redacted all these types of cases. So over here, in this case, first off, this is not a halacha. So it's interesting that we're not actually learning a halacha from this dream. We're just learning a minhag, or a way to do things. But what's furthermore is what was going on here. And these three kings, were they just of the Avodah Zarah? Were they actually Talmidei Chachamim in a sense? So if you look a little bit later in the Gemara, it says in Sanhedrin Kuf Gimel, Menashe haya shoneh 55 panim betorat kohanim, that in the book of Vayikra, Menashe knew how to explain things 55 different ways. Achav 85, he knew 85. Yerovam 103, and Yerovam knew 103 ways to teach. So we can see from here that they might have been of the Avodah Zarah, but these were tremendously knowledgeable Talmidei Chachamim. They, how they fell, we don't really understand, because we don't understand the ta'ava of Avodah Zarah, because the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah removed it. There was a tremendous problem of Avodah Zarah where people actually got sucked into it. And part of it was because the Avodah Zarah actually was alive, well, and it worked. It still works till today. Avodah Zarah is not something that is just bowing down to a tree or a statue or pesel or believing in nature. There are ways that the Avodah Zarah reacts, and it would give the people enough information and comfort and guidance that they were very, very attracted to it. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah removed it. Today, forms of Avodah Zarah could probably be the materialistic world, or running after materialistic pleasures and money. It's not the Avodah Zarah in the sense that it was back then, but it's an Avodah that's Zarah from the Torah. But what's even more interesting is, we think that Rav Ashi was just talking about Menashe in the sense of friend, Haver. But if you actually look in the Gemara, the word Haver is not talking about the friend the way we know today. They says, O chavruta o mituta, or have a friend, like a Haver to learn with, or death. But when it's referring to friend in the Gemara, more so than not, it's talking a Haver that's on the same level as another individual in regards to Torah knowledge and in regards to halakha. So what we see here is that Rav Ashi was not actually putting down Menashe below him. He was actually saying, let's talk about our havdin, our friends, that were all knowledgeable, but they were knowledgeable like us in our bedin, in our learning. Menashe came to him in the dream to correct him on two things. He said, first, I'm not your level or the level of your father. I'm so much farther than you. Where even if I ask you a simple question like, where do you cut the bread when you make the bracha? You stumbled. You didn't even know that. So don't call me your friend. I'm not at your level. I'm on a much higher level. Why he fell to Avodah Zarah? That's a different story in and of itself. But there's another message in the idea of why did he teach him the halacha with bread? What does bread have to do with any of this thing, or where it's cooked or baked? What he's kind of saying in a metaphor was that he was the bread. But because he learned so much Torah, he got so deep in it, he almost got cooked too much, and that was the mistake. And there is something to that, and this can tie itself to Elisha ben Avuya and to a few others that were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim and great, but something snapped. along the way. We're not at a level to understand it, or has v'shalom to even belittle these kings, or these individuals, these Tannaim like Elisha. We're not there. We understand that something went wrong, and there was something off about it, and that's why we don't follow, their processes or some of their teachings. But to assume that they are below us, or in any sense less knowledgeable than us, is foolishness. And this was one of the references. Now, what's interesting also is that when Rav Ashi was talking about it, he was discussing the Macha Niftach Behavdin. He was referring to all the three kings, Achav, Yerovam, and Menashe, as being, his friend. But only Menashe came to him in the dream, which, again, it could mean that Menashe had the zechut to do it, and it kind of maybe backs some of what Rabbi Yehuda was saying in the Mishnah, that maybe he does have a chelik le'olam haba. And so with this, we can really learn something very important, that whenever we're talking about individuals, Tannaim, Amoraim, Melachim, that lived in the time of the Nevi'im, or individuals in the Ketubim, that just because you read that it's in the book that they did something or something was wrong, we're not on a level to put them down. We're on a level to explain what the Sefer wrote and what it says, not to use our own conclusions as to who these people were, because there's no doubt that if Has v'Shalom people were in those same situations, they'd probably be in a much worse situation than the individuals they're talking about. And so with this, we can humble ourselves when we're talking about some of the greatest kings and people that ever lived in history, that even if there's things that we didn't understand that they did, or seemingly looks or is written as what they did was wrong, we have to go with it on a very, very fine line, as found in the story of Rav Ashi and Menashe. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen.